Hey everyone, this is Kevin from the chesswebsite.com, and today we are in game number 8 on our series of the 2021 World Chess Championships being held in Dubai between Magnus Carlsen, the reigning champion, and Jan Nepo, the challenger. Now, up until this point, we're halfway through. It's the best of 14 series, and we've had 6 draws, and we had 1 victory. That victory was the last time Magnus Carlsen played the white pieces 2 days ago in game number 6. It was the world record for the longest chess game in a championship series. Just under 8 hours, 136 moves. So Magnus Carlsen looking to extend his lead going into the break tomorrow. And Jan Nepo looking to fight back. Definitely does not want to go down 2 games going into the break. So Magnus Carlsen in game number 8 starts out with e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6. So getting into the Petrov defense. Opts for a different line than we've seen in the past. So instead of the main line of knight takes here on e5, d6, and then knight comes back to f3. Instead, we see Magnus Carlsen going for the d4 line. Knight takes here on e4, bishop d3 attacking the knight, pawn to d5 defending the knight, and now the knight takes up here on e5. So you can see kind of a interesting position. Both sides have their pawn on the d file supporting the outposted knight. Knight to d7. Magnus Carlsen decides to go ahead and exchange. So bishop takes here on d7. Knight to d2, and then we have the exchange here, and then bishop to d6. So symmetrical line from both sides here, and kind of makes you wonder how they're going to progress from here. Is it going to be a slow, drawish game, or is one of these sides going to try to open things up? Castle on the king side from Magnus Carlsen, and then h5. Was not expecting this from Nepo that says, you know what, hey, if you're going to castle, I need to strike. And so h5 says exactly that. You're typically not going to play h5 and then castle yourself on the king side. Could try castling on the queen side at some point. But really the only thing we know is Nepo is looking to attack, and this is the start of that. And so h5 was exciting to see because, pretty much going to see some fireworks after h5. Queen to e1, check, and then king f8. So we start to see the idea of not castling on the queen side, wants to get his king to a safe square, which it is right here on f8. But then he can maneuver his rook around the board with h6, centralizing if he wants to, get the queen involved at some point, and then bring his rook over here to e8. From Magnus Carlsen's standpoint, decides to go ahead and play bishop here, b4, attacking this bishop. Queen comes to e7. We do see the bishop take here, and then queen takes d6. Queen d2, rook to e8, and then rook over here, e1. Says, yeah, if you want to exchange, you absolutely can. Rook to h6, just getting it involved into the game since it can't castle on the king side. This is really the only way for this rook to get involved into the game. And then queen g5. So Magnus Carlsen getting pretty aggressive with his queen here. Pawn c6, just solidifying this pawn chain, protecting this pawn d5 from the queen here. So that's definitely good to see. And then the rook takes here on e8. And you don't want to just take down here with your rook, because then all of a sudden Magnus Carlsen can just recapture with his own rook, and he's essentially gained a tempo here. We have the exchange. Magnus Carlsen controls this file right here. Instead, a little bit better to play pawn c6 because now after the exchange, bishop takes, then Magnus Carlsen has to use another move to bring his rook to e1. It's just not recapturing here on e1. But at the end of the day, we do see the rooks come off the board, and then Magnus Carlsen controls this e file, which is better than this rook right here, h6. You typically want your rooks to control open files or semi-open files. This rook on h6 is not really doing either of those. It's trying to get involved into the action, but right now it's not doing a ton. Also, Magnus Carlsen has a much more active bishop here on d3 compared to this light square bishop on e8. It's playing defensive mode. It's blocked by both of the pawns. So all in all, Magnus Carlsen definitely has a better position. Nepo, recognizing he does not have the advantage, plays queen f6, saying, hey, Magnus Carlsen, hey, buddy, Hey, let's just go into the break. Go ahead and exchange off the queens. It's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. Magnus Carlsen, not today, my friend. We are playing queen e3. We're not really looking to trade off material. He is looking for blood and to press the action. He's also threatening queen takes on e8. That would be checkmate, so definitely have to worry about that. Bishop d7. Now it's just defending this square here on e8, so pretty good square here. h3, just to make sure, hey, there's no shenanigans, that there's no back rank mate or anything like that. Also does stop some of the threats if the bishop were to come down g4 at some point, but the main thing is to make sure that there's an additional square this king can go to if it ever needs to escape. Pawn c4, we do see the exchange right here. And then a pretty interesting move. So Magnus Carlsen has the isolated pawn on the d file. And then if you start to look at where black can really go from here, has to worry about the threat that this king is under. Does not actually see the threat and instead plays the move pawn to b5. Now this is a big mistake. I'm curious if you can actually see the error on board. If you want to pause, see if you can find the best move for Magnus Carlsen. But the threat really is queen a3. This is check, and it's also attacking this pawn a7. And you can see after the king moves, because can't come to the e file, it's being attacked by the rook here on e1. So after the king comes to g8, then the queen takes here on a7, and hey, yeah, you could now take our bishop, but we'll just take your bishop as well. So Nepo loses a pawn in material, and typically at the highest level, we haven't seen these crazy big mistakes. Now, in the last game, game number 6 where Magnus Carlsen won, yes, there was an exchange. There was queen for 2 rooks getting into the end game. Very complicated to see if that was a mistake. Now, at the very, very end, 130 some odd moves in, yes, there was a mistake by the queen, but these small incremental mistakes, we don't really see Nepo make those. But he loses a pawn here, and Fabiano Caruana, giving chess commentary throughout, said that he went on tilt because after that move, he then played the move queen d8, and this is actually another mistake, and things start to build on themselves. Really what he should have played is bishop takes here h3. Now, queen takes f7, check, and then queen takes, rook up here, e8, probably the best move after the king moves away. Then we see an exchange here, and then bishop to f5. Yes, black is still down in material. That mistake here on a7 is not going away, but all of a sudden, Magnus Carlsen has his big pieces off the board. That queen is definitely off the board, and you've started to trade down some material, and he's only down a pawn. So that's not as bad as how play continued, because after the queen comes here to d8, then we see the bishop come back b3. Magnus Carlsen recognizes, okay, I won that exchange, and now I get to hold on to all of my powerful pieces. Let's not exchange anything else. Let's see if I can use these pieces to my advantage. We see rook to d6, attacking this pawn. Rook up to e4, defending that, and then bishop e6. We do see the bishops come off the board here, rooks come off the board, and now it's a game of, okay, Magnus Carlsen is up a pawn. He does have the centralized queen right here. There's 3 pawn structures for Nepo. Going to be difficult for him to hold on to all of those, especially with a centralized queen for Magnus Carlsen. So this is looking like a very, very good setup for Magnus Carlsen, and getting into the end game, there's just no one better out there. Now it's just a matter of execution. Nepo now plays queen to a5, and we do see in exchange that, yeah, if you want to attack my pawn on c6, that's fine. I'll take your pawn here on f2 after queen e1, check, king moves, and then queen f2. Yes, he has the threat of queen to g3, but the king's just going to come back. But we do see queen taking here on e6 with check. This is extremely important because what he doesn't want to do is perpetual check, meaning Nepo plays queen g3, and then the king comes back to, let's say, g1, and then he can just come down e1 and just keep doing that over and over. He wants to avoid that. So Magnus Carlsen, he's trying to slowly take pieces. Always make sure that he's in a position where his queen is extremely active, attacking his opponent's king, and at the same time make sure that his opponent cannot perpetual check. So a lot of stuff going on for Magnus Carlsen, not too much to think about. For mere mortals, though, that many times can lead to a drawn game. King H7, queen down to E4, check, always attacking. King comes back to G8, and then pawn B3. Queen takes here on A2, and then queen E8. This is check, also taking this material over here. So getting into the clear in-game, and Magnus Carlsen is up 2 pawns in material. Going to be very difficult for black to hold on to this and get a draw out of this. Queen to F2. Queen over here, E5, as we talked about before. Just stopping all the threats that black has. Now, he can't even play the queen to G3 now because they were just being exchanged, and then it would be pretty easy for Magnus Carlsen to push up the pawns. So queen to B2, and now the idea is protect both of these pawns right here. He needs both of the threats on the board to have just an easy endgame. After king G8, he plays queen D3. Also had the option of just taking on H4, giving up the B pawn, but I do like his approach that says, you know what, I'm not too worried about this pawn on H4. Instead, let me play queen D3 and just hold on to both of these pawns, because it's so difficult to try to protect both of these pawns for black to really attack both of those at the same time. And so, yeah, I really like the move of queen to D3. Queen F2 from Nepo, and then C3. This is not only defending both of these pawns, but it also is always looking at the square here on E1. If the king moves, can play king to G1, and so that protects the square here on F1. But really the threat is the queen coming to G3 at some point and then coming back to E1 and check. And so the queen on C3 is also defending that square on E1. Queen to F4, check. King down to G1. You can see not many threats, though. The queen also can't come to C1. That's defended as well. So Magnus Carlsen covering all of his bases here. King to H7, queen D3, check. Pawn D6, defending. Queen to D1. So this is defending the entire first rank here. Also still defends both of these pawns right here, and also allows for this pawn to start pushing up the board. So really, really good setup from Magnus Carlsen. Queen E3, sure. King over here, H1. Pawn G5, the pawn starts to push forward. Anytime you have a passed pawn, you always want to find ways to push it, and the queen doing a good job of defending that. Pawn G4, so Nepo recognizes he can't attack with his queen. The only other option is start to exchange on the board. But then H3, queen to F3, and at this point says, yeah, if you want to trade off your queen, if not, I'm going to take this pawn right here, and then you're going to have no threat on board. Nepo realizes it is game over, and he resigns. Now, sometimes you've asked, how would this game continue? You're typically going to see queen to C1. You can't just trade off because then you're just down so much material. There's no way to stop it. So you have to keep your queen on the board, even though it's losing. King H2, maybe. Pawn takes, queen to E4. Yeah, this pawn could absolutely fall. But yeah, let's go ahead and attack the king right now. King to G7, and then king takes right here, and then up 3 pawns in the endgame. There's just no way for black to stop this. Eventually, white's going to be able to promote one of these pawns and easy victory. So game number 8, we had some fireworks. Nepo tried on the king side of the board, push forward with H5. Hey, props to him for trying something. He could have easily just had a drawish game. Both sides, had a symmetrical lineup, and it did not look like Magnus Carlsen was going to be able to break through. So he tried, but at the end of the day, did play a mistake, lost a pawn, went on a little bit of tilt, lost another pawn, and at the end game, Magnus Carlsen made 0 mistakes, played it flawlessly. And so after game number 8, Magnus Carlsen is up 2 full points. They do have a day off tomorrow. Coming back after that, Nepo has the white pieces, and surely we're going to see something besides the Rai Lopez anti-martial. He's tried it every single time before, 4 times in a row. I don't think he can try it. It's not going to work. So I'm expecting fireworks. The rest of the way, these players know that we can't have any draws now, or Magnus Carlsen will win in short order. So really excited to see this victory. Magnus Carlsen is playing exceptional chess. If you're not enjoying these games, the end games that he's playing just flawless. I mean, the dude is an absolute machine. I don't know what to say, but it is fun. I'm curious from everyone that's watching how you think this is going to end. Is Magnus Carlsen just going to win a game or two in the next few, and then this is over? Does Jan Nepo have any chance at all? Can he come back? Can he get a victory in the next series? So we have a day off and then two games. Can he win one of those to give himself a shot, or is this thing over? So let me know in the comments below what you think of this series and if you think there's any shot of Jan Nepo coming back. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.